Hey guys, my name is Jeff and this is the 2024 Nissan Ariya, which is a larger EV alternative to the Nissan Leaf. And it's one of the nicest Nissans I've ever seen on the interior, and it drives great as well. The Nissan Ariya starts at $39,500 and the one we'll be looking at today as equipped is around $50,000. And today I'll take you through the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, and of course, we'll take it for a drive. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Nissan Ariya. This thing looks incredibly sharp. I love the two-tone with the black. Obviously, a lot of EVs are adding this gloss black. We've seen it on Kias, and it's an interesting trim differentiator, and it still kind of has a bit of that EV look, but I think this is a bit more into the normal car level. And it has these super cool DRLs on the front, obviously LED headlights, this cool grille passage, the new Nissan logo. It's quite a slick looking vehicle in terms of everything that's in here. I like these vents on the side too, and the parking sensors are kind of hidden in there. The sort of wide body flares look quite sharp. The wheels get these very EV-like aero disc covers, which are supposed to make it more efficient, but we'll leave that up to you if you think that helps a lot. Obviously, every mile counts. You get these power folding mirrors that have cameras in them to help with your visibility and parking. You, of course, have some of the options like the moonroof or the sunroof here enabled in this car. One of the things that I really like is the fact that we have keyless entry, not just the driver and passenger door, but even the rear doors. So anybody when the key's nearby can unlock the door and open it easily. That's usually something reserved for very, very expensive luxury cars. But here on the Ariya, you have it on all four doors, and that is something that I quite like to see. I also want to point out that the Dunlop tires that are on this car are actually very, very quiet, but I'll talk a bit more about those as we get into the driving section. We move to the top here, we have this very fun and exciting, overly aggressive spoiler, which I quite like. We have our dual shark fins, which really isn't something you ever see. And as we come to the back, more LED lighting, but everything just looks quite sharp. Nissan, the Ariya badges, the Empower Plus badges for our trim, but most importantly on this one, we actually have a power hatch. So one tap and it easily pops up. You can do that with the key fob if you like to, but I am very impressed with the way that everything works on this vehicle. And in my opinion, I think it is one of the sharper vehicles. Obviously, you tell me what you think, but I think it looks pretty dang good. One of the things I maybe want to see differently is maybe the rear windows being tinted, but obviously that's something that's easy to remedy in the aftermarket if you like tint, or maybe you don't, but here in the desert, it's definitely a necessity. So moving on to the interior, you can see the puddle lights here for the Nissan Ariya, which are quite nice. They are an optional feature, but if we go ahead and open it up, we have one of the nicest interiors I've ever seen on a Nissan. I would argue this is definitely more so an Infiniti interior. I mean, the soft touch materials, the wood grain, the leatherette appointed seats, which are perforated and have all these different materials, side bolstering, these hidden buttons in here in the dash and the center console, even this flat bottom leather steering wheel are all incredibly nice features. Not to mention these are power adjustable side bolstering in the back and the legs, of course heated seats and a heated steering wheel front and rear, which is incredibly nice in this car. But before we go too far into the details, first, let's hop in the back here and take a look at what we got going on. So obviously the same material here. I really don't like the light colors. I feel like these dirty a little bit too easily, but maybe you're cleaner than I am and this better suits your taste. So let's go ahead and hop in and take a look. Here in the center here, we actually have some chargers, but those heated seat buttons for the people in the rear. Now, as far as the overall seating usability of it, it's actually quite roomy back here. This is gonna be the big differentiator between the Nissan Ariya and the new Nissan Leaf, which is either coming out, I believe at the end of 2024, is gonna be the back seat room. Here in the Ariya, I'm about 6 feet tall, and you can see my head doesn't actually touch the back, and my knees don't actually touch the back of the seat with it set up for me. So what does that mean? Well, realistically, I would say you can fit most adults here in the back seat, which is a great thing to have. Obviously, that's not going to be a necessity for everybody, but it's nice to have the option. You'll certainly be able to fit comfortable kids, even older kids, here in the back, no problem. I could spend a lot of time back here. I think the seats are fairly comfortable, and it's just a nice experience, not to mention with the added ability of the things like the heated seats. I would say this is like a luxury car, and the price is not so much on the luxury side. It's a very, very nice vehicle, but let's go ahead and take a look here at the front and see what's going on. So get out of here, go ahead and close the back doors, and let's see all the features of the Nissan Ariya. We'll go ahead and climb it in, foot on the brake, and hit the big power button. And the car comes up with some fun chimes, but it's mostly quiet because, of course, this is an EV. I'll turn down the fans a little bit. It's still quite hot here in Phoenix. But there's lots of cool features. The first one I actually want to point out is a bit of a weird one, and that's going to be the mirror here. Obviously, standard mirror as regulated, but when you flick it, you get an actual video camera. Now, why is this important? Now, this is not mandated, but in my opinion, when you get a bigger vehicle like an SUV, especially a 3-row SUV, this is something that's really, really nice to have, because as you start to fill out either the back seats or your back storage, it can be hard to see out the back window, and it's fairly far away in some of the larger vehicles. But here, that negates all of that by just putting a camera in the back, and now you have fantastic visibility. Of course, if you don't like that, as I mentioned earlier, you can just use the standard mirror. So quite a nice feature, not to mention all of the other cameras that you'll find here in the Nissan Ariya, which make it easy to drive, maneuver, park the vehicle, along with all of the various driver assists. So that's quite a nice feature. Obviously in here we do have things like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, navigation, Bluetooth, Sirius XM, all of the features that one could ask for, in addition to being able to manage a lot of your climate controls, including some very specific adjustments of how you run your system. Now, it would have been nice to have things like ventilated seats, but for the price, I'm willing to look past that in the favor of heated seats, which I know a lot of the world likes, but here in the desert, we prefer our ventilated seats. You can see that there's a lot of, I don't know if I should say physical buttons here in the center. Really, the only physical buttons are going to be up here. I'm going to have some of the various skip features, the hazards, the volume and power buttons for the radio. And then these are almost like haptic feedback buttons. So you can actually adjust them here. You can hear that they've got a little bit of that haptic feedback, some slight clicking as you sort of press it. Now, these look really cool, but they're not that great for driving because you'll have a hard time trying to figure out what it is exactly you're trying to touch or find, and you'll have to take your eyes off the road. That's the only problem I can see with this. And that's not a big deal for you, honestly. You can adjust a lot of this pretty easily, and I think it's pretty good, but that's just my 2 cents on that. Here we actually have the shifter for the vehicle. You can go ahead and shift it down. That puts it in drive. This B mode is actually for a more heavy regenerative braking mode, which is going to be kind of like a golf cart. So it switches to B over here on the dash. And that's essentially going to be anytime you take your foot off the gas, the vehicle is going to automatically start slowing down using regeneration. So it's going to be saving battery charge while slowing down. And you could even technically save your brakes. Now, if you just push this forward, it goes into neutral. Then if you touch it and push it forward, you'll put it in reverse, and just a tap will put it in park. Now, there's some other really crazy features, like the fact that this button here will physically move your center console. Obviously, one of the biggest benefits of EV is going to be space. And I mean, look at this. There is nothing going on in here. So you can move this however you like. You have some cup holders hidden away, which aren't overly adjustable, and even some blocking space, and a wireless phone charger, which is a great feature. Moving on to what's in front of the driver here. Obviously, another digital display. Lots of stuff is available here. Your charging, currently your range, and even your various estimated charge times if you were to plug in somewhere, which is a great thing to keep track of if you're going to plan on plugging in. You can do what I did and go to the grocery store while your vehicle's charging. There's all sorts of ways to make it work for you. Here in the steering wheel, we have plenty of controls, volume controls, and even some of the various assists, voice activations. So picking back up where the GoPro overheated, I just wanted to cycle through the menu and show you some of the various things that are available, like battery capacity, of course, tire pressure, all sorts of various adjustments that you can switch you to, your directions, your music. All of that is definitely available here to set it exactly how you want. You also have the optional heads-up display, which is kind of hard to see, but it's right here. And that is, of course, a super helpful feature to have so you don't have to really take your eyes off the road. But that's really all I wanted to say. A couple different buttons here on the side for charging, popping the hatch, the heated seats, light adjustments, all your power window adjustments, and even your power windows, child locks, all that type of stuff, memory, seating options. It's all here in the car. But I just wanted to show you this interior because it's so impressive what Nissan was able to do here in the Ariya. I love all the various lighting, which you can see as it gets a little bit darker. It's just a very good looking vehicle, I think, on the exterior and here in the interior, and this is really where you can tell they put a lot of effort into this car. Now, it's not too often a manufacturer lets you look under the hood of an EV. Some manufacturers, like Mercedes, for example, just lock the hood and make it only accessible to Mercedes technicians, but that's not the case here in the Nissan Ariya. So while we've got it open, let's go ahead and talk about it. First of all, I like that they did add some of the various badges, and it just turned on here to try and help keep the battery cool because we are out here in the desert. It is quite hot here in Phoenix, over 100 degrees days as of late during the summer. Here, this is the front wheel drive module. This is what it looks like. It's good for 238 horsepower. It has one AC synchronous motor, obviously on the front axle there, and it has an 87 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery that is even liquid cooled. So everything can stay nice and cool underneath for the battery as it kicks on here in the summer heat. The other thing important to point out is that the Nissan Ariya is rated for up to 289 miles of range, which isn't too shabby, but that is the max for the Ariya model. If you wanted a bit more than that, you'll have to look elsewhere, but that's what you'll find here with the Ariya. The front wheel drive models, obviously it'll vary based on what packages you choose, but that's what you can expect max for mileage depending on what you're running as well. It does have a quick charge port over here on the side, which I did have the experience of using. And one of the things that I liked is the fact that they even have some of the basic instructions on the side here in case you forget while you're using it. So that's nice, easy to function with. I like the experience with the Ariya in terms of charging, which should be able to fast charge in about 40 minutes. And obviously that's going to be from the core from about 10% to 80%, assuming you have the correct quick charger. This of course has all of your standard regenerative braking systems. And if we want to talk performance, for example, even though that's not necessarily what this one is about, the front wheel drive version is good for 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds, but the all-wheel drive versions of the Nissan Ariya will do 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. And that is seriously quick for a vehicle of this size, and obviously will give you more power when going up hills, but I never noticed any problems while I've had this front wheel drive version of the Nissan Ariya. So what's it like to drive the Nissan Ariya? Well, I'm gonna be honest, it was actually a really unexpected experience. You see, the steering with this thing is actually really direct, and it feels like you can point this thing in a direction and it just goes. I am surprised with how, I should almost say, dynamic that it feels, to the point where I would say it's even more fun and engaging to drive this car, but not in a way that makes you exert extra effort and makes it exhausting, but really just more so entertaining, which is really not something I was expecting. The other thing that's important to point out, when you think of EVs, you have to realize there's really no drivetrain noise. Sure, there's a little bit of whirring and stuff sometimes, but then everything else becomes heightened as far as sound. And here in the Ariya, it's actually a really quiet compartment. You can barely hear any road noise. It's really when you only go over certain cracks and things like that, and even then it's incredibly quiet. On top of that, you don't hear a lot of the other cars that are around you as well, which is really impressive, and I think says a lot about the engineering and the extra effort that Nissan put into this car. As far as the visibility goes, there's lots of thought into that too. These A-pillars are set really far forward, and they don't take away from your visibility. You can easily check your blind spots, mirrors, lots of cameras that are easily accessible on this car, but more importantly, especially when it comes to SUVs and things that have back seats, is actually this here. The fact that your rear view mirror here in the center actually has the camera and the regular mirror functionality, to me, that's incredibly important. If you have tall people in your back seat, or if you have a 3-row vehicle, this should be a necessity. It's not a necessity, but Nissan added it here in the Ariya, and I think that is a pretty big deal, because now you can have stuff in the back and it won't obstruct your view or affect your safety. This is a seriously impressive vehicle from Nissan, and the driving quality is really, really good. I'm very impressed by everything with this vehicle. Generally, we assume these are uninteresting vehicles, but that's not the case here. I think if you take one of these for a test drive, you will be thoroughly impressed, and you'll be saying a lot of the same things that I did here in this video. So there you have it. That's the end of the video, and a quick look at the 2024 Nissan Ariya, which is an incredibly impressive vehicle. That interior has to be one of the nicest interiors found in any Nissan. You could probably even consider this an Infiniti, and I don't think you would be wrong. Now let's talk about some of the other features. Obviously, you're a little bit limited by the range, but if you ask me, I don't think that's really what an EV is for in the first place. I think an EV is best served as a commuter, and this vehicle is easy to recharge. There's a ton of charging stations that use the Nissan plug that you see here, and of course, it's going to be great just for that regular driving. It's an incredibly comfortable vehicle, it's very quiet, and it's a pleasure to drive. So I think you get a lot for your money here with the Nissan Ariya. Plus, it's a bit bigger than the Nissan Leaf. So if you've looked at the Leaf in the past, liked everything about it except maybe the size, well, maybe this is the new alternative for you. Certainly something interesting to check out that's cheaper than a lot of the EV competition, which tends to be expensive, and it's quite the impressive offering if I say so myself. Now, which one do you get? Obviously, the all-wheel drive ones make a bit more sense if you live in a climate that demands it, like somewhere that snows, but I think the front-wheel drive would be just fine for the majority of people. Maybe even going with some of the cheaper trims would serve you better, even though this Empower is quite nice. So with that, that is going to be the end of the video. If you could go ahead and comment down below, let me know what you think about the new Nissan Ariya. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And of course, if you could leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. And consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.